This episode of the Astro Powder Powdcast is brought to you by Gema. Whether you're the shop manager, system engineer, or powder coater, once you decide to make Gema an integral part of your shop, you'll understand how simple it is to be so productive. For a demonstration, call 877-437-6771. Once again, that's 877-437-6771. And be sure to mention, Ask Joe sent me. When you want to know that everything is covered, complete it with Gema.
Hello, all you powder coating fans, and welcome to episode 30 of the Astro Powder Powdcast. Episode 30. That's Trenta for our Italian friends and Dreissig for our German friends. Yeah, a little international flair there. I'm your host, Joe Powder, a.k.a. Kevin Biller, and with me, as always, is my colleague, sidekick, and the former lead guitarist from that famous 90s band, Short Bus. That's Nathan. He's our powder coating research group formulator dude.
You mean we're smoking dog, man? We're broadcasting from the Powder Coating Research Group studios in Columbus, Ohio. The purpose of the Astro Powder Podcast is to bring the latest news and technical know-how to the global powder coating community. So let's get it rolling.
Okay, but before we do,
Shout out!
I'd like to give a heartfelt shout out to Nick Page.
What? So surprised.
Nick's our senior testing manager in our powder coating research group, but he's also a sound engineer. He's an accomplished musician, and he's the creator of all the sound effects and stingers that you'll hear on these podcasts. Quite a talented young man. And from what I understand, he has a new album out. So here's hats off to Nick Page. He's a great coworker, friend, and a very talented engineer, musician, and all-around good guy.
Yeah, we'll put a link to the album in the show notes. I mean, if you're listening to this on your podcast app, just check out the notes and you can follow it there.
Yeah, don't hold any of that against us if you don't really care for his kind of music.
Yes, it's entirely fair.
Okay, let's get back to the podcast and to our Guess What segment.
Guess what?
All right, here's a big one. Coatings World announced that the European Coating Show 2021 is canceled. So the organizers of the European Coating Show announced that the upcoming show scheduled for September has been canceled. The statement reads, "In many discussions with exhibitors and industry representatives over the past few weeks, we've had to conclude that the prospects of success for holding European Coating Show 2021 are not sufficiently assured." So basically there's, a lot of the regulations, from government have been dropped lately, and now it's easier to hold big events and conferences than it was previously. But I think we were kind of speculating that it's probably some of the attendees, a lot of the big corporate exhibitors and things like that if you have some big ones decide not to show up, then you're not going to have much of a show.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the other thing is that, again, the bigger companies in particular are being very cautious with allowing their personnel to travel.
Oh, and internationally. I mean, this is one of the biggest coating shows in the world. And so, yeah, maybe it's easy for, German companies to go over to Nuremberg. But, yeah, when you're talking about crossing borders, airplanes, international travel, and people from all over the world, then I think, a lot of the, an abundance of caution is still in place.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that the world is not quite out of the woods with the pandemic, because there are some new variants that have been springing up, and it does have some people pretty concerned. So it's a shame, but it makes sense.
It's understandable. Yeah,
it's understandable.
But there will be some sort of a digital, calling it the Congress. So there will be some digital component the 13th and 14th of September. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, the next ECS is going to take place as scheduled in 2023, March 28th through 30th. So the American Coating Show is going to be 2022.
2022, yeah. So hopefully the dust will settle on the pandemic, because we're looking forward to that one. We have a booth already reserved for the American Coating Show.
Yep, but yeah, that's some pretty big news, because we know that they were being super cautious. They pushed it back. They were working with all their vendors and everything, but just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, it kind of frees up a little bit of time in the busy September for shows.
Yep. All right, and this one comes from IPCM. AkzoNobel is developing advanced technologies for electric vehicles. So this is something we've discussed before. The electric vehicles opening up kind of a whole new range of applications for coatings, and powder coatings in particular. There's a huge global demand for electric vehicles now. They're talking about the global electric vehicle industry will be worth around $700 billion by 2026, which is up from $140 billion in 2019.
It's kind of crazy, and there's some really important points here, and I think a lot of us didn't see this one coming, Nate, but it's the functional coating performance of powder coatings, specifically for electrical insulation and for dielectric stress resistance and things like that. And these are the functional coatings that are going to be coating electrical components like bus bars, battery hardware, stators, and rotors, actually, in the motors. And really, they're saying this is really going to grow exponentially for the next number of years.
Yeah, and specifically in automotive, powder coating are used as like a decorative or as a protective coating for different components on the car. But yeah, there's a whole history of electrical insulative and high temperature coatings that have applications in these battery powered vehicles.
Yeah, who'd have thunk it? I wrote some editorials back in 2015, 2016, where I was saying, it doesn't look like the future is very bright for powder coatings in the automotive market. And alas, and surprisingly, look at this. It's for something that just really developed in the last 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely. All right, and our last piece of news, this is from Coatings World. DIC Corporation is, they're finalizing their acquisition of BASF's color and effects business. They're going to transform that into a subsidiary and enter into a sales and purchase agreement.
This one's interesting because you say DIC, and that may not be a household company name to everyone, but that's Dai Nippon Ink and Chemical, if I'm not mistaken. And they bought Sun Chemical a number of years ago. I say a number, less than 10 years ago. But Sun Chemical was a large organic pigment producer. Mm-hmm. Sun Chemical, around the same era, they bought Bendelutz, which is a metallics company.
Right.
Mostly aluminium type flake. Aluminum here. But this BASF Color and Effects materials, it's the old Engelhard,
right,
which was really one of the leaders, if not the leader, back in the 80s, 90s, early
Pearlescent.
2000s. Pearlescent pigments for the most part. So, yeah, that's
Wow,
interesting.
Putting together a kind of a massive group here.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's noteworthy. Anyway, okay, friends, it's now time for the question and answer portion of our podcast.
Do you have a question? Ask Joe Powder. Well, you can ask him. Ask Joe Powder. He has the answer that'll advance your powder coating. It's the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast.
All right, our first question comes from Dan in Cincinnati. He says, "Hi, Joe. We're seeing premature blistering due to humidity on parts that are being tested to meet a customer specification. The test method is ASTM D4585. Would it be realistic to run the humidity test for 1,000 hours and have no blistering? Also, could you give me any feedback on what might have caused the blistering we currently have? We did put the powder on pretty thick for these."
Okay, Dan. Thanks for your question. And this one, it's an interesting thing because there's a lot of things that are connected here. And let me try and break it down for you and for our listeners. Blistering in a coating, in an industrial coating, due to humidity exposure, is typically due to two different things. It could be incomplete or inferior metal pretreatment, which basically you've got dirty metal or you've got some residual traces of things on your metal due to you didn't clean it well, first of all. You didn't get the dirt and the oils and soils off the surface. Another kind of invisible issue could be poor rinse water between the cleaning and phosphating stages if you have phosphating. So those are important things to keep in mind. Also, if you have incomplete metal pretreatment, which means you're just running your metal pretreatment system out of specification for, it's either below temperature or maybe low concentration or poorly maintained. And finally, the final seal or the last rinses that are go on the metal, they could cause a problem if the water's not clean. Mm-hmm. And I'd recommend, if you consider any of these things, get your pretreatment system into specification. Absolutely. Talk to your chemical supplier. The other thing is look at your water. Make sure your water is clean. Because if you're carrying, salts and ions into your rinse waters, that may leave little locations for blisters to occur. The other thing could happen is if you have incomplete cure, and you have an undercure situation, you may have higher permeability of your coating. And, that could be something where you have heavy parts that are not getting enough temperature or enough time at temperature. So I'd take a really close look at your temperature profile of your parts in your oven. So that's another thing. The other thing that can happen, and it doesn't sound like it's a problem with these parts, but thin film thickness. If you're just on the ragged edge of your film thickness, it's on the low side and you're getting kind of almost incomplete coverage, that could give you problems with humidity resistance resulting in blisters. Another thing that I should say, maybe you just have a substandard low quality powder coating. So I would go back to your powder coating supplier, look at their technical data sheet, and see what they expect the performance to be for something like blistering or salt fog. The last thing I want to tell you is you mentioned this test, ASTM D4585, which is their a humidity test or a controlled condensation. The specification says that it can be run at 3 different temperatures. And if we want to go old school, it'd be 100F, 120F, 140F, which that translates to the modern world, 38C, 49C, and 60C. Well, if you're running the test at 60C, the vapor is going to be much more aggressive. the coating might be a little softer too.
Mm-hmm.
So double check to see how the test is being run. Double check to see how the test should be run, because you may not see the same kind of blistering incidents at 38C as you would at 60C. Important stuff. The other thing is, I mentioned, is your coating cured? You can do a quick solvent rub test. If it's a polyester, you might want to do a xylene/MEK blend, usually 90-10. If it's an epoxy or a polyurethane, you might want to look at MEKs to test your degree of cure. So anyway, those are the things I'd be looking at. Good luck, Dan. And let me know if you have any more questions. I'd be really happy to help you out. Kind regards, Joe. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you looking for a solution to coat your most difficult products with no touch-up? Then Gama's dynamic contouring equipment is the right solution for you. Unlike robotic coating, dynamic contouring offers greater flexibility without all the programming hassle, while correctly positioning each powder gun to automatically coat your parts. For more information, call 877-437-6771. Once again, that's 877-437-6771. And be sure to mention, Ask Joe sent me. Automate it, position it, detect it, code it, complete it with Gama.
The Powder Coating Research Group is a proud sponsor of the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast. PCR is the only independent laboratory dedicated to powder coating technology. We do everything from raw material evaluation, formulating the next generation of coatings, new product development, testing, troubleshooting, training, and consulting. To find out more, visit our website at powdercoatingresearch.com, or you can email Kevin Biller at kevinbiller@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening to the Ask Joe Powder Podcast. All right, our next question comes from Ayub in Abu Dhabi. He says, Dear Joe Powder, what could the weather effects be on an epoxy polyester coated iron? It's a sunny and salty environment with sun exposure.
Okay, Ayub, thank you for your question. And this kind of file under the, hey, it's a powder coating, it has excellent performance, coat my parts with it, and it'll be wonderful. Well, the thing to remember here is not all powder coatings are created equal. In this case, you're using an epoxy polyester, aka a hybrid, and it sounds like either you or your customer are going to expose the parts, or the field conditions are going to be outdoors, which I just have to tell you, the weather effects of an epoxy polyester are going to be very severe. And I'll tell you what, the epoxy polyester powder coating will resist corrosion, but one thing is for sure, UV resistance will be extremely poor. And I'm saying extremely poor. We do our testing in South Florida at typically a 45-degree angle exposure, and epoxy polyesters start seriously degrading after about 3 months in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't consider them as an outdoor durable coating whatsoever. And basically they're going to chalk, they're going to yellow, and within just a couple more months, the polymer is going to break down and actually start ablating or falling off of the surface. So I think what you need to do is take 2 steps back, Ayub, and make a different selection for the powder coating that's going to be outdoors. The best systems for you to consider would be, and this is important, high quality polyester. The industry calls them super durable. That super durable moniker has to do with UV durability. You can also consider a polyurethane. They can have the same type of type of performance. Couple that with a really high quality cleaning and pre-treatment system. If you have to have superior performance and longevity, and I'm talking about 10 to 20, maybe 30 years, you would want to have an epoxy primer followed by a super durable polyester or maybe Qualicoat Class 3, which would be a fluoropolymer-based powder coating. Hope this helps. Best regards, Joe Powder.
Yeah, the previous owner of my car had the wheels done, and I can only assume it was a hybrid because it just looks awful. So I'm supposed to be this, know-it-all powder coating guy, and I'm driving around with a hybrid on my wheels. It's frankly shameful, but
it looks pretty bad. I think you need to ask the boss for a raise. Maybe you could get those things.
Get those things. Yeah, I'll get around to it.
All right.
It's on my list of stuff to do.
All right.
All right. We have another question, and this one's from Alan Young in Columbus, Indiana. It says, "Good day, Mr. Powder. My name's Alan. I'm a production engineer. I have a few questions regarding the curing process with powder coat that I was told you might be able to assist me. Currently, we're having issues with leaving touch marks on the parts from where they contact our cart. It leaves a black line on the part, but we've been able to remove it with rubbing alcohol. Our current oven setup is turning parts out of the oven at roughly 300 to 350 degrees F, 149 to 177 C, with only 3 to 4 minutes of cooling before they're placed onto our carts. I believe that our parts have not had the proper amount of time to cool down and harden before they're placed on the carts. Most of the carts are lined with rubber edging, nylon or plastic tubing to keep from scratching the metal cart structure. My first question is, what's the general amount of time a part should rest before being handled or worked with? Additionally, is there a material or handling method that you might recommend for handling them with our current setup? Thank you, Alan."
Okay, well, good day to you as well, Mr. Young. You've got very good observations, and I think I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit on this one. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely looking at the right issue here. The powder coating surface is most probably too soft to be in contact with something where you got any kind of abrasion or friction or weight on that interface. Now, powder coatings are thermosetting materials, which mean they harden or crosslink when they're cured properly, and that's heat and time, temperature. This thermosetting process, causes a polymer and a curing agent to chemically react and gives you a nice, hard, durable film. Now, that being said, the hardness of this coating film will vary depending on the temperature. And here's where we get into the physics of the coating. Most thermosetting powder coatings reach what they call a T sub G, or TG, also called glass transition temperature, and it's going to be somewhere between 85 and 120 degrees Celsius. So that's the kind of physical property of a material when it transitions from like a hard, glassy state to a softer, almost rubbery type condition. So it's important to have the coating, even though it's cured, to be below that T sub G, so it'll be a harder, and when I say glassy, that's a polymer physicist's term, but you want to make sure that it's back to its hardened stage. And you said, okay, how long? Well, how long is not really the issue. The issue is what temperature, and then how long does it take to get to that temperature. The coating and your parts don't have to be necessarily down to ambient temperature per se, but it should be, I would say, below 60 C, which is about 140, I believe, 140 Fahrenheit. Anyway, you got to let your parts cool down a little bit. to do that, you either got, just to have a longer cool off period on your line, or you may want to augment that with just moving air, some high velocity fans. So anyway, I would certainly, I would run some tests, on the spot, on your line, where pull parts off and simulate packing them out from right after they get out of the oven to, a few minutes later, measure the temperature of the part, wait another couple minutes, do it again with another part until you can see you're not seeing the problem. And then, kind of back integrate that into your process. So, but I think, one of the most important things is find out what that temperature is. And you can go back to your powder coating supplier. If you can get a hold of a technical person, they'll be able to dial in what that temperature should be based on the chemistry. So anyway, thanks so much for your question, Mr. Young, and appreciate it. Best regards, Mr. Powder. Okay, everyone, before we go, let's fill you in on some upcoming events.
Hey, friends, where are we going?
To an upcoming event.
All right. This one, by the time the podcast comes out, it'll be pretty short notice, but I think we still have a couple slots left at the PC Kitchen Introduction to Powder Coating Formulation. That's the 22nd and 23rd of June, and it takes place here in Columbus, Ohio. That's our short course that we give on what goes into a powder coating and how to put those components together and to formulate a powder coating. The 13th through 15th of July is Powder Coating Week. That's the Powder Coating Institute's event that they do in conjunction with CCAI. That's going to be at Renaissance Orlando at SeaWorld, Orlando, Florida. And yeah, we'll be there just walking around, taking in some talks.
That one, Nate, it's sneaking up on us pretty quickly. And I really wonder, and I really hope that the stars align, the planets align, and that they have it. It's going to be sweltering hot in Orlando.
Middle of July in Orlando.
Oh, it's going to be miserable, but we spend most of the time indoors or in the pool. But I really would like to make that one because I'd like to see some people we haven't seen in, what's it going on, 16, 17 months?
Yeah, it's been so long. Just want to go drink beer. All right. Then the 22nd and 23rd of September, the Powder Coating Summit. That's also one of our events that's going on in Columbus, Ohio. The 27th through 29th in September, the Middle East Coating Show is taking place in Dubai, the Dubai International Convention and Exhibition Center.
I just want to mention real quick, that Powder Coating Summit, the 22nd, 23rd of September, 2 days prior to that, we are going to debut our PC Kitchen 2.0, which is advanced formulating techniques for the powder coating chemist or formulator. We got a heck of a lineup there, and that one's filling up quickly as well. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of people who want to go to that. Again, there's about 2 or 3 seats left on that one, but that's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and it's taking place right before the summit, so if you're in town for the summit, you can sign up for that, and and just stick around for the duration. One more to mention, Abrafati in Brazil, Sao Paulo. That one was scheduled in September, and they pushed it back to November 30th through December 2nd. So if you're, really looking for a big international show, that's, that covers the whole South, Central, and, Latin American region. Hopefully that one goes on without too much of an issue as well. I know Brazil has their own issues with the pandemic. So
yeah, I hope so too. Okay, before we finish, you can catch the Ask Joe Powder Q&A in print and also on the websites of Powder Coated Tough Magazine, which is the flagship magazine of Powder Coating Institute. I'm actually the technical editor of that. I do work alongside of Sheila Lamoth and Troy Newport on that one. Then our good friends at PPCJ, Polymers Paint and Color Journal. That's color with an OU. That comes out of the UK with our good friends Christine Malthouse and her team. That gets circulated in Europe, which I guess, a lot of times the British don't think they're part of Europe, but they are, I think, or not, or maybe. And
controversy warning.
Yeah, and also the Middle East. And you can find some of our work at the PCI, again, Paint and Coatings Industry Magazine, on their website under the Finishing Flash tab.
And you can find us online at askjoepowder.com. You can subscribe to the podcast anywhere that you get podcasts. That's all your Stitchers and Spotify's, Apples and Googles. We do have a YouTube channel. We're planning to do more of the interviews coming up. We've got a whole list of people that we want to talk to and that want to talk to us. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, it'll come up in your recommendations. Also, we'd like to get enough subscribers that we can change the URL to something custom, because then it'll be easier to get to. Twitter, aka Joe Powder. If you would like to ask a question, the email address is askjoepowder@yahoo.com, or you can call in. We have a voicemail box at country code 1-478-2-ASK-JOE. That's 1-478-227-5563. This has been a production of the Powder Coating Research Group. You already heard about Nick. I'm not going to drag that on. And Dave's not here.
Come on, man. I've got the stuff.
Dave's not here.
And don't forget, keep your powder dry, my friends.
Dave, let me in, man.
Dave's not here.
No, it's me. I'm Dave.
Man, I got the stuff. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast. This episode was brought to you by Gema. Gema's Optiflex Pro manual gun uses Power Boost technology, which gives you the industry's highest charging power at 110,000 volts and 110 microamps, allowing for faster and more efficient powder coating. We're handing you more power, more quality, and more control. For a demonstration, call 877-437-6771. Once again, that's 877-437-6771. And be sure to mention, Ask Joe sent me. When you want to know that everything is covered, complete it with Gema.
I'm going to talk about like this. Are you? Yep, that's the plan. Except at the beginning, I like to blow out your eardrums. Because exuberance is welcome.
Powder coat things.
I was just thinking I might have to do something holy on this episode. We get it right off the jump.
Does that make an annoying sound?
Sounds like a very large zipper.
That's pretty cool.